seems legit.
Guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing my pattern, which is the Vixen bag, but I have hacked it because I like hacking my own patterns. So I have made a different kind of handle attachment. These are actually attached to a pocket, so there's a whole pocket in here, as well as I have added a crossbody strap. I think this bag has come out super cute. I still need to do its final iron, which is why it looks a little bit wrinkly. But all in all, I think it's come out absolutely fabulous. So if you want to see how to make all of these changes, please stay tuned. Alright, so let's get started. I've put all my hardware in here. Oh, I hope it's all the hardware. It was late last night when I did this. And I'm going to start with my handles, because it's a fresh bobbin and I want to. So I've done the glitter vinyl. And because it's a thinner glitter vinyl, I'm going to do a double fold so there'll be no raw edges. Oh, see, I already realized I've forgotten to grab something. We're putting a lot of hardware on this bag, for no other reason than I know it's going to look amazing. And because we're doing all the handles and everything a new way that I haven't done in a video before, I want them to really look good. So I've put the double-sided tape down the center. I can eyeball that center really well, but if you're new to sewing, feel free to use a pen or something to draw that center line. And if this is done in fabric, you can in fact iron it in half and iron it so it stays where you want. This is a nice thin fabric, so I don't really need to leave a gap. If you're using a thicker vinyl, leave a little gap right in the center and it'll help it fold over nicer. I'm not super worried though, because like I said, this is thin and flexible, which I like. So in half like that, sticking it down of course, and then in half again. So I'm going to go up to a 4 stitch length. I want nice long glorious stitches for this, and I'm going to start on the folded edge. Now we won't be seeing these ends, so I'm not super worried about them. We're just going to line up the open edge, and I'm going to stitch 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the vinyl or the fold. Now because this is a lighter vinyl, it's not going to like it if I turn around and go the opposite way. So what instead I'm going to do, just lining up this last little bit. I like it when it's even, like that. And so I'm going to back stitch at this end, chop it off, bring it down here. Now to the other side. So now you can see that there's no twisting happening, even though it was a thinner vinyl. So you can also chain stitch those, but that is one handle done, so I can pop it aside. And the reason I like to start with handles, especially when I'm on a fresh bobbin, is because I don't want any joins in the thread if I can help it. And I missed the bin then. I also think I've missed the center with some of, oh no, we're all right. So I like to bring both sides together at the same time. Personally, I find this quicker, but it did take a little bit of practice to get this quick. So if you go and look at some of my older videos, you'll see me doing it this way, and it takes me way longer. But you do get into a groove, and it ultimately is quicker than sticking down one side and then coming back and doing the other. So something to think about. Especially if you've made a few bags now, now's the time to hone your skills. Alright, so in half, and then in half again. I'm going to stitch, and I'm going to back stitch. And then I'm going to line up the edge. I'm just doing it in bits. Another option is, if you want to, is you can use clips for this. If you've got a thicker vinyl that doesn't like to fold easily, clips are your best friend in that particular instance. As for this vinyl, I used to stock it. I am getting it back in. I have purchased it. It's out there in the land of traveling package, I guess is the best way to put it. So we're just stitching, back stitching. And so that is our second handle done. I did them 24 inches, by the way, because I wanted them longer-ish, I suppose is the best way to look at that. All right, so now we're going to move on to our bottom halves. Now I've fussy cut everything. Fussy cutting does take up a little bit more fabric, but you do get a better result of a bag. So I personally do think it's worth it. And so I'm looking for, you should have cut 3 of the exterior and 3 lining. I love this lining so much. Did I cut 3? Please tell me I cut 3. I'm sure I did. There it is. Right. So what we are going to do, this, because this is canvas, it is a lot thicker, so I haven't interfaced it. Just so you all know. There's a point you get to where it becomes too thick if you put too many layers. And I didn't want that. It makes the handbag a lot heavier even when it's empty. So I've put my hefty interfacing, which is the Vilene 1050F. You can also use Form Fuse 1600, and I think that's equivalent to SF 101, I think. So we put them right sides together, and I'm going to do all 3 so that I can chain stitch everything. As we all know, I love a good chain stitch. And I'm also making it so that the clips face the exterior piece, because I always want the floppiest piece underneath. Because then the feed dogs pull it through nicely. So that's just something else to think about. And once I get to a certain point of too thick, like when I'm quilting stuff, I actually prefer to go to my walking foot. So, right sides together. I don't know why I'm clipping this. I actually could have done it without it, but anyway. Clips just make it so you don't have to think as much when you're sewing, right? You don't have to worry about the layers because they're already together. So I'm going to go back to a joining stitch, which for me is 2.5, if you didn't know that already. We're going to stitch and back stitch. And I'm doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Back stitch, pack up the clips, grab the next one, join it in. Now, if you find that this piece is pulling on your sewing, and you can feel it pulling, cut it off. Because we don't want to upset our stitching, but mine's fine. So trim there, trim there. Then I need my zigzag scissors. Just because this will help it have a nicer curve. Now obviously you don't have to do this if you don't want to. If you are worried about it curving, you can just put little nicks in it with normal scissors. And so then I'm going to fold this over, and I'm going to start in the center point and pinch it over. And then I'm just going to roll that seam out like that, and we're going to top stitch. So I'm going to go up to a 4 for a top stitch. We're going to stop with our needle down, and then I'm going to readjust this side. You can also iron this, especially if you're new and you don't want it to misbehave. Grab an iron. Next one. I can probably do the next 2. Do all the trimming now. So this, because there's only a small seam, this isn't a big deal. If this was a 1/2 inch seam, you'd really want to do this, or you won't have a smooth curve. And we want a smooth curve. Right, push all of that off into the bin, like so. And then again, I always start in the center because it's like the low dip point, and we're going to bring it over and put a clip. And then I'm just going to fiddle with that until it sits the way I want. And again, you can iron this if you want to. I do have an iron set up on an ironing board next to me. There's no iron here. They're all over there, but that's all right. I will work on bringing one over. Right, and then the next one, it's the same thing again. We're going to fold over that middle point. And that's because it changes direction. So I really want to clip that in place so it behaves itself. The others are bigger sweeping curves, so they're easier to control. But that tight bit where it changes from down to up is not necessarily always your friend. So I put a clip there to make sure it stays my friend and stays where it's told. And then up. Trim off those tails. Okay, so this one is going to be my front because it says the Golden Girls. And then I think I picked this one for the back. So this one is for inside my lining. So I'm going to grab one of my lining pieces. And then I'm just going to baste that around all of the edges. And when we get to the top, we're going to backstitch. And then I'm going to split this pocket in half. So I'm going to fold the whole thing in half. And grab some scissors and just make a little nick like that. Only has to be really, really tiny because when you fold it out, it's twice as big. And then I'm just going to go bottom to top. And then I'm going to backstitch at the top twice because that's a stress point and I don't want it to break. So I like to backstitch twice. And then trim off all of these tails. And that's the inside. Oh, it looks so good. Okay, back to these. Now this is the trickiest part of my day. Because we all know I'm not good at cutting circles. And yes, before anybody comments, I have seen that I can get like templates for these and they're little like cutout things. I will probably buy them one day, but not today, obviously. So I'm going to grab my small scissors, which I use for cutting embroidery stuff, like appliques, a pen, a craft knife, and then I'm going to need these bad boys. I'm not going to put that there because I'm going to knock it off. See, I'm slowly getting smarter. So what I want to do is I want to grab a ruler as well, which now hang over there. I need to remember where I've moved everything. And I want to come in, I think 2.5 inches. I think there will be a good spot for there. So 2.5 inches will be the center point. I'd just like to point that out too. Now, obviously, I'm making this up as I go, but I can kind of eyeball what's going to look good. So I'm going to hold this flat against the table, and then I'm going to come out 1, 2.5, and I'm going to mark about 3/4 inch down. So between the 3/4 and 1 line is where I put a little mark. This is erasable in case you stuff it up. So 2.5. You need to do it this way to make sure that we're lined up. 2.5. And then there. So that's my middle point. So now I'm going to take this and I'm just going to line that up over the line I drew like that. And draw the oval. Where's my mark? Now I can't see it because it was on a dark bit. There. Right. So it's going to just be below the stitches. Just below the stitches. So, it's a fairly, I'll show you this side. It's a fairly large oval. So that's potentially going to help us. So I'm going to start cutting on the outside part of the line to make enough room to get my scissors in. And I'm just going to cut slightly larger than the hole. Right. Now we need our drill. And I really hope nobody's borrowed it this week. Aha! Drill so that we can undo the screws on the back. So you don't need any die sets for these because they screw in, which is a nice change. So then we're going to separate it, and if all's gone to plan, that should just fit over. So now we also need to make a little bit of a gap for where the screws go in at the side here. So at the side, I'm just going to cut a tiny little rectangle. And now, we start off small and work our way bigger because we can always cut more off, but we can't glue it back on once we've overcut. So you want to just make sure you're taking little tiny smidgy bits at a time. We're also going to want our fray stopper glue for this. But that worked out pretty schmicko. This side needs like a tiny bit more. When I say a tiny bit, I mean like 1 mil more. But it will make a difference. And then once we're happy with our space, there and there. So I'm happy with that space now. I'm going to be able to get that on with very little worry. So now I'm going to take my fray stopper glue. Now I'm only going to do one of these on camera. I will turn it off to do the other three because you don't need to watch me do them all. Feels excessive because these take a while, as you can see. But I'm just going to put fray stopper glue around that whole edge. I'm even going to use my, oops, careful because this stuff's really, really sloppy. And I'm going to paint it on both sides. I'm just using what's left of my fingers and the stuff that I made run down the table because I get this stuff everywhere. What can I say? I'm a messy person. It's also why I wear crappy tracksuit pants for sewing. I can wipe everything on my pants. It's fine. So that is now covered in a light layer of fray stopper. You don't want it too thick. It'll take way too long to dry. I also don't need it to dry to finish this. So I'm going to put face down for the hardware, then face down for this. So this side goes on the back. And I'm just going to line it up like this. And then grab my tiny little screws in my screwdriver. Now this is supposed to be slightly magnetic, but as you can tell, it doesn't really work out that way. And then, now I'm not going to put that as tight as possible because I still need to get the other side in. So you should just kind of mostly do it up and then make sure that the other side lines up. And then I'm just going to really tighten that up there. And there is one handle. So then the idea will be that this is going to go through there like that. And we're going to put a little end on there and it will look absolutely freaking amazing. So I'm going to stop the video and go and do the rest of them, so the other three, because that took a while. And then we will come back and continue with the bag. So, I have now done all 4. So they all have the handle connectors. So now we're going to take our main body. So I went with all over glitter because amazing. And then this time I'm going to use clips, mainly because there's foam underneath. But we're going to take the clips and we're going to line them all up. And then I'm going to baste it together. So you want it to all sit lovely and flat and even and glorious. And then we're going to just baste all the way around. And if we clip both of them, see, that's not sitting flat. See how that's not sitting flat? We want it to sit flat. It's important that the pocket sits flat because I'm not going to divide this because it's going to have the handles on it. So I'm just going to leave them as open pockets. Now, if you wanted to go one step further, you could also put a rivet right in the center. I would be using rivet magnets. Sorry, put a magnet in the center. I would use rivet magnets if you wanted to help that stay closed. But I feel like the handles are going to do that job for me. And we'll see. I might end up having to do it at the end before I sew the bag shut. We will have to just wait and see because I haven't made these handles before. It's just, it was in my head for this fabric. The fabric showed up and I was like, has to happen. And then I was like, no, do a different bag. You guys have seen this video 100 times, but we're doing it anyway. Some fabric just speaks to me and tells me what it wants to be. And as crazy as that sounds, it's pretty much how it goes. So I am now just going to stitch around the edge to create the, like, turn these into a single piece is the name of the game. Because it'll be easier to sew later if these are joined rather than trying to join this while it's separate pieces. I always say joining 2 things is easier than joining 3. So this has just turned from 2 to 1. And you can cut this off if you need to. Backstitch. Right. So now it's a single piece. So that is that part of the exterior now done and looking fabulous. So let's move on to the zipper part. Where is the lining pieces? There they are. Right, so I have decided, since we're doing gold hardware, I decided to do the pink, the light pink with the gold teeth, because I have a stash of it. I have ordered more, so for anyone that does shop with me, I am having trouble getting all my stuff. It's all MIA. For those who don't know what MIA is, it's missing in action. Shouldn't speak in letters. I hate it when my husband does it. I shouldn't do it either. Alright, so we're going to go lining right side up. Yes, this zipper's too long. We're going to cut it down and not use the dodgy bit. See how sometimes it just comes with a dodgy bit. So I never send those bits out. I cut them out of the zip and work around them. There seems to be dodgy bits on both ends. So I've got to cut it all off. I refuse to use dodgy bits. I call them dodgy. They're usually dirty more than dodgy. So I'm just going to line this up and I'm going to use my clips to help hold it in place. This will help prevent the stretching. Some people use double-sided tape. You can do whatever. And then we're going to do, I think we'll have Golden Girls and then the faces. So I'm just trying to figure out how I want them to sit. I think I want it to sit like that. So this one will be at the top. So when you look over the bag, it will be at the top and then their faces underneath, which means I want the zipper tape along this edge here and this edge here. So you can just put a clip so that you remember that. I'd remember, but I'm just letting you know that that's another way to do it. So you line them up and then you put a clip on which edge the zipper teeth go and it'll help you to line it up later. You don't have to do it, it's just a thought. It helps me. So back down to a 2.5 stitch length. I basted in a long one, not that it really matters. So we're going to stitch, we're going to back stitch. So the edge of my foot is skinny enough that it's running along the edge of the zipper, stitching it down for me. Then I'm going to get to the end and I'm going to backstitch. I'm going to pull that out. I'm going to trim off the excess. Now, normally I would keep this bit because it's more than 5 inches, but this one's actually damaged right there. So it's going in the bin because I won't use damaged stuff on stuff. And it wasn't just dirty, I couldn't have cleaned it. It actually must have got caught in something. So now I'm just going to fold the top layer back. And I have put the foam here. I do find that it just gives the bag a little bit of an extra structure. So keep that in mind. You don't have to use foam. If you don't want it squishy, instead of foam right here, you can use stabilizer. And it will give it still a firm feel, but it just won't be padded. So it just depends on what you like. Back up to 4 for my top stitching. We're going to back stitch always to lock our stitches in place. And off we go. So I'm just creasing that with my hand as I go. You can also pre-iron it down, provided that it's not vinyl. I did nearly do this bit in vinyl, but I thought the words would be way cooler. Right. So the lining is non-directional. Quite often I try and use non-directional linings. It just makes the thinking process a lot less. You don't have to worry about which way things are lined up if it's non-directional. Another reason why I like waterproof canvas, also non-directional. And a lot of prints these days come where they're all kind of all over the place, which is good. So we're just going to clip. I got a bit carried away with the clips there, didn't I? So then this is the edge that we wanted because it's going to sit like this. So that's the edge we want to put here. And that's why the clip was helpful, even though I showed you how to do it again anyway. You can just like skip that step about the thinking and double checking yourself. All right, so that's lined up. Now we're going to go back to a 2.5 stitch length. And yes, I'm going to keep telling you my stitch length. The habit I've got myself into. And trim off the tails. My snips are over on the other machine because I had to embroider my logo on the base as always. Right, so again we're going to finger press. So you want this seam here to be under where we're top stitching. It will help the bag sit flatter. Just trust me on this. If you miss it, it's okay, but the idea is it will help it sit flatter once we've made the whole bag. And I'm nearly out of bobbin thread, I can hear it. Beautiful. So see how now they face the way I want. I'm going to put 2 zippers on the top. And I'm using heart zippers because I got a whole feel going on with this bag. And so that's what I've chosen. You can just use 1 zipper. If you're trying to keep down your hardware, just put the 1. But I do like the 2 on this bag. It's nice to kind of open it like that. It's making me want another Vixen bag for my current bag. My current one is Temptress, which I do love, but I made it out of brown leather and I'm bored looking at it. Like I want something more exciting. So I might end up making myself one of these. Or the triangle bag by Aura Rosa. I do have to do that video, and I've been putting the video off, if I'm honest, because I was gonna do it out of the Lord of the Rings fabric that I've got coming, because I can vision it. But I want it in between bags, so. Okay, that was 1 teeth crooked. I can see that before I even get down. Sometimes the zip just doesn't want to be my friend. It's very rude of it, in my opinion. All right, so 1's on. Then we go to the opposite end, crack the zip. Thread the zip on. maybe, maybe not. It's like my fingers aren't functioning. And then get them in the center and make sure that they line up without having like a bubble on one side. I always check this, and then you can always take off one end and fix it, but always check. So now, just to prevent any problems later on, I'm going to just stitch over the zipper teeth so that they can't come undone. This is especially important if you're one of those people that don't get a whole bag done in a day, like you just do a little bit and then move on. As soon as you put your zippers on, stitch them together so that no one can come along and like, because if you pull on that too hard, the teeth will undo. So you just want to stitch them. Doesn't have to be a lot. I'm just going back and forth within the seam allowance to hold the teeth down on both ends, just like that. So see, they already split there, but that doesn't matter because it's outside my range. Right, so now what I'm looking for is not that. Oh, I can do this bit. Right, so this is my lining and my sides. I can do them now. Not what I was looking for, but we can do that. So I'm just going to put right sides together. So this one's the base and these are the side pieces. I'm still in a joining stitch length, so I don't have to change anything. We're going to stitch, back stitch, go along, back stitch. Then we're going to line this one up. And again, non-directional, so it doesn't matter which way is the top. But if you have directional fabric, this part needs to be the top. Then I'm going to squish this around and chain stitch that into. You can't do this with exterior because the foam and everything doesn't squish around that much. But the lining is a whole different story. Now, just to make my life easier, I'm actually going to push these to the inside and top stitch them down. It's going to have some top stitching on the inside, but it's going to help later. So I think it's worth it. And again, chain stitch the other one straight in. Right, so it's sitting the best. So now that'll sit flatter, and so when we go to sew it in later, it will be easier. Less things flopping around. So the same can be done for the exterior pieces. But I also need to put my bag feet in because I want bag feet. I like bag feet. I think it elevates the bag a little bit. And since I've gone all out with all the other hardware, you couldn't very well skip bag feet, now could we? So for this, as a general rule, this long edge, I always do 1.5 inch in from the edge, which will give us the 1/2 inch seam allowance. So the feet are 1 inch in from the actual base. And then the sides are dependent on how big the bag is. So this ranges anywhere from 1.5 to 3, just depending on the size of the bag. Today I'm doing 2. But yeah, it does vary bag to bag. I just try and do it proportionally, if that makes any sense at all. So, we now need our, oh, God, these are heavy. My hole punch. Whew. It's a workout picking these up with one arm. In my workshop, my dream workshop, which hopefully will happen sooner rather than later, these are going to be bolted to a bench. So you will have to move with me. I'll have it next to me. It'll be like here. But they will be bolted to a bench and never move. Which is fine by me. Right. In my bag of hardware, or tray of hardware, bowl of hardware. I don't really know where I'm going with this. There's still some stuff to go because we're adding a crossbody strap today, as you probably saw at the start of the video. And I've left my strap ends in the packet so I don't lose the mini screws, because we all know I drop things. And I'm just waiting for the moment when I drop this, if I'm honest. It's not that I deliberately drop things. I guess I'm just a clumsy person. So now I've pushed them on, we're going to squish them down, and you can feel it. I know you can't really see it on camera, but I feel them when they squish together. You can kind of, if you watch here really closely, you kind of see it go chunk, chunk, chunk. So there we go, bag feet. When I expand further, I'm going to get different shaped bag feet so that we have options. Just because I like options. I like to use all different stuff. That's why I have a bunch of different types of zippers that are still generic enough to go with everything. I don't know if I'll go into custom zipper pulls. I don't know if I'm ready for that. As cool as it would be, which ones would I do? Obviously a skull. I feel like you all know that. But then what? I'd like to do a bat, but is a bat common enough? The reason I'm doing it this way, so I'm having it feet side up, just so that they don't get in my way anymore. I also don't need that many clips. 3 is probably enough. Stitch, back stitch, back stitch. And then I'm going to do the same thing that I did with my lining. And I'm going to push these. I'm actually going to fold these open. Especially if you've got a thicker vinyl, you really want to open this flat. It'll make it more even when we're joining everything. So I'm going to open it out flat, and I'm going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch from the seam on both sides. I'm still going to back stitch because it's a good habit to be in. And you'll notice I'm going slower. This is because it's raised and it's got vinyl and stuff. It's quite easy, to slip off the 1/8 of an inch line. And then you'll have wonky stitching, which I don't want. So I go slower. And the thicker your vinyl, the easier it is to fall off the edge. Around the other way. If this is too big, just fold it over one more to be able to hold it into the throat. It's not going to hurt it. We still have to turn the bag out, so it's going to get wrinkles no matter what, but we can iron them out, so it's not a big deal. Base and sides. So before I join this to this, I want, and I'm going to cut it off my crossbody strap, I want D-ring connectors here. Another option could have been that I could have run them up the side and had them come off here, but I kind of like them in there. And it's a small enough bag that it won't matter. So, I'm literally just going to cut off 4 inches from this strap. It is quite a long strap to begin with, so it won't matter. It'll make it less of a crossbody and slightly more of a shoulder strap, but that won't matter either. And this is what happens when I forget to cut things sometimes. You can just take it off the strap. The strap doesn't need to be insanely long. It's already adjustable. That'll be enough. So now I have strap connectors, just like that, without getting up. And my strap is still, you know, huge. So it's not gonna matter. Nobody would notice if you did that on all of your straps from this point forward. So, double-sided tape, again, as always, because it is your, you know, best friend. I know some people are worried about it gumming up your needle. It's never happened to me. Don't ever buy one that says extra hold, because that's where you're going to definitely have trouble. I don't know if that exists or not, but you just want like a normal, whatever. I think these ones are acid free because they're designed for scrapbooking, but whatever. I also buy the cheap. I buy the ones from Woolworths when I'm desperate and I don't have time to drive an hour to Spotlight. And I also use the ones from the reject shop too, because whatever. Okay, so I'm just going to fold them in half, and I'm actually going to stitch 1/8 of an inch on each of the edges, just so it's pretty and it's got a little bit more stability to it. One side, other side. Same with this. This is just giving this piece less of an opportunity to be able to stretch, because the stitches are now not like a boning, but it's a definite added measure to help prevent it breaking and or stretching. Right. So now we need our D-rings. When this thread finally runs out, we're going to do our crossbody strap so that we don't run out on that either. So we want the join side to go against the flat part here, and then we're going to fold it over. Now, if you're making these out of fabric, I do suggest you put a medium woven interfacing, because again, that will stabilize it. So again, join side against the D-ring, fold it over. These are 4 inches long. You can cut them shorter if you don't want them to hang up as much. I could cut them right back. Personal preference. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put this and I'm going to stitch it. I'm going to tack it on. So I'm within the seam allowance, so nobody's going to notice this. I'm going to tack them on. Now it can't go anywhere. Oh. So I've done a boo-boo. I can show you what it is. When I was basting this, I caught the lining. So see how now it won't pull back? You want to undo that before you go any further, or it's going to wreck the lining of your bag. It won't look cool. It's a lot of stitching to cut through too, because I was quite thorough with my basting of the zipper. Oh, see, that's exactly what we didn't want. I basted it too well, now it won't come undone. Oh, the joys. Ha! Right. So now, to fix this, you can fix it. You just go all the way back and then zip it up again. Because, funnily enough, the basting is still there enough that it won't let me completely take the zipper off. Even though I just cut it all out, it's still technically mostly attached. So I'm just going to now baste this on, and I was made sure this time that nothing underneath is in my way, because that is important. And so now that's on. So I don't have to worry about forgetting them. I have attached them. We want our lining base and sides. And I always attach the lining first because it's more pliable, and so you got more wiggle room to do stuff. So we're just going to line this up like this, and I'm going to stitch a 1/2 inch on a joining stitch length. Thank you very much. All the way up to, but not over, our little D-ring, which pretty much just covers the zipper tape nicely. Oops. Then we're going to do the other side. So again, pull it tight, line it up, pull the exterior out of the way, pop it under, stitch. It's a really long tail. And then back stitch. So this does get a little bit fiddly, but we do it this way because then we don't have to do binding, because I know a lot of people didn't like binding. Binding makes patterns quicker, but you do see it. So sometimes I like binding, sometimes it's necessary, and then sometimes I actually prefer to not have it. Right, so then we're going to grab the other lining side. So we always do the lining first, because trying to attach the lining while trying to move all of this out the way is more tricky. We all know how much I like easy things. So that is now our lining in. So let's do our exterior. So if we're going to go like that, we're going to lift it up and then that. So I want it that way. You just want to think about which way your logo is. You don't have to, but I do. So we're going to stitch and back stitch, and then we're going to again stitch up to, but not over, the D-ring. Which essentially currently just means get as close as you can without touching your lining. This bobbin is going to run out any minute now. The more time you see, there it is right there. The more time you spend with your machine, the more you can hear it when it runs out. Okay. So, that worked out well. So that's all attached. Oh, well, no, that side's not. One side's attached. But before I attach this, I'm literally going to stop and I'm going to switch to do the crossbody strap because of that whole bobbin rule that I have. This is not a full bobbin. It's probably just over half. So I really don't want to get to a point where I have a join in this. So we're just going to do it now. I like to pat this down so that I'm not stretching the vinyl out of shape. It's also a good way to take out your aggression if you're having a bad day. You can just hit it harder. Alright. So I'm not going to just peel all of this off. I've learnt this the hard way. When I do that, it tends to twist and stick to my table, and then I have to fight my table to get my stuff back. So, we're not doing that. We're just going to fold it over and then pinch it to the center. And I've just done like a bit. And then we're going to do a bit more. Stick. Alright, and then I can open this out and do a bit more. And I just continue on like that so that I don't have to worry about the tail end and what it's doing. So now that I've only got that much, I can pull off the rest and chuck down. This is a really long bit of vinyl, so I have no dramas with cutting off that end. You can pretty much add a shoulder strap to any bag like this. So bag in this shape by doing the D-rings that I've just done. Alright, back up to a 4. Move my snips or scissors, and then we're going to fold it over, and I'm going to start on this edge. So we're going to stitch and back stitch. Just moving along slowly. Oh, I promise my fingers aren't peeling, it's the fray stopper. I take fairly good care of my hands. That last little bit just came unstuck. So it's giving me a little bit more grief than I think is necessary, but it's alright. So, pull this out, trim it off. And the reason I'm doing it this way, I know this will twist if I do it the other way. So, I don't want that. now that we've done the strap, I can take my strap adjuster and swivel clips and then I'm going to go through the middle loop and I'm going to do the stitch for in here, and then I might do a rivet for the other end, just because I can. So I'm doing the cross box thing, and I always start up near the hardware so that I don't overreach when I'm coming up towards it on that stitch there. And I could have done a rivet under there, but nobody really looks here, so it doesn't matter. Alright, so with this bit facing up, I'm going to thread my swivel clip on. And then I'm going to go back, under. I'm going to have a little bit more to work with. And then, you know what would look really cool here is a strap end. I'll have to go get another packet now, but it will look cool, so we're going to do it. So I'm just going to take one strap end. I'm going to seal that so I don't lose the other screws too. So I want it to go on like this, on like this, upside down, so that it's showing here. So this is the way I want to put it on, like that. Now obviously you don't have to do any of these things. These are all just cool little things that you can add on. Where is my screwdriver? Okay, so you got to flip it over and then pop the screws in. Now I'm going to be very careful not to lose these. These ones seem to be slightly more magnetized than the other ones, but only slightly. So in the hole. Oh. So you want to make sure that you screw them in so far that they are at least flush with the thing. You don't want these sticking up. Again, line that up. No? There's always one that doesn't want to play ball. Alright, so now they are flush. Actually, they're slightly lower than flush, which means I can't feel them, which is good. And then I'm going to put a single rivet. So I'm going to line them up so they're even. Now, because it's one rivet, I don't need to measure it because it doesn't need to match anything. So I'm just going to put a single rivet like that. And then grab one and pop it through. And that is a really good looking strap end. Ugh. Again, I could have done this at the end when I was going to do all of my handles, but you know, I'm impatient, so we're doing it now. So there you go. That's like a super cute strap end now. So that's that strap done. Now we can go back to actually building the bag. So I need to go back to adjoining stitch length, and we're going to continue on with this. So this is how I operate when I'm not recording. I do it in the order that I feel like. Certain steps have to be done before other ones, but not all of them. I'm going to flip this over, do the other half, stitch, back stitch, make sure that the lining is pulled back out of the way, and up nice and close like that. Okay, so now we want to lay out flat both these layers like so, and now we're going to stitch just between where we left off over to the other one. So from here, because this is going to be a stress point of the bag, what I now want to do is I'm going to zigzag down and then back. Because we've got a shoulder strap here, you want to have reinforced stitching, preferably without breaking a needle. Thought that broke then, but we're good. It just threatened to break. So I've got like a nice messy stitching cross stitch back and forth. Yes, it's messy, but nobody sees it, and this is now reinforced, so it's not going to fall out on you or your customer, depending on if you're selling the bag or not. So don't worry if it looks messy, so long as it's stable. Now, to avoid my flinching that I just did, I'm going to avoid back stitching. So if you don't like back stitching over layers either, so you can swivel it around. I'm going to stitch, needle down, swivel back, stitch, back, stitch, may seem ridiculous, but I also did not even nearly snap a needle that time. And again, that has now got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 basically lines. So that is only coming out if somebody like attaches it to something and yanks as hard as they humanly can. Then it will probably break, but that is not your fault. Nobody should be doing that to their bag. Alright, I'm going to zip this open. Then I'm going to match these side seams and find the center. Now I've already found the center of the base because I had to do the embroidery. So that's the exterior done. Now we're going to find the base of the lining. So I just have to find the halfway point here. And all of this, the other reason why I haven't interfaced this particular fabric is A, because it was thick, and also because I'm going to iron it to the back side, because this is double-sided bag foam. You can iron it to both sides. So the lining will be ironed to the inside of the bag. So it's not a huge concern for me that it hasn't got interfacing. If this was a lighter fabric, of course I would interface it. But it's a good quality canvas. So I wouldn't do it to all the ones at Spotlight, but some of the ones at Spotlight have a nice, like, good quality to them, and they're thicker, and they fray less. You can basically tell because they fray less. The quicker the fabric frays, the more you should interface it. But I'm having very little to no fray from this, which tells me it's a tight knit, good quality, so I didn't need the interfacing. That's a good way to tell, right? Take a piece, do this to it, like a Tory squish on a large scale, and if all the edges fray, make sure you interface it. It's the easiest way to tell. All right, last inner pocket, we're going to do a Tory pocket, because we all know I love Tory pockets. You could also do slip pockets, like on the other sides. You could have both the same. You could do one of these with a zipper overlay that's like pink glitter. I did think about it, which is why I'm bringing it up, but I went glitter on glitter, I'll call it at some point. So that's why I did that. So I'm just kind of, I eyeball it. That's about an inch. I can eyeball that really, really easily due to the fact that I've done this pocket a gazillion times. But you can kind of put it anywhere, so long as it's not going to be within the seam allowances of the side. So just keep that in mind. And I didn't want it in the seam allowance at the bottom either. So I'm just going to stitch this long line and then pivot at 180, jump across to the other long line and do that one too. And back stitch. Trim, trim. Cut off all the tails and the jump stitch. We don't want that either. Messes with our mojo. Now I'm going to just fold this over and pinch it. Cut in between the two lines just a little bit. The reason we're only doing it a little bit is because if your line's crooked, you're going to end up cutting the actual stitches you just did, which can be fixed, but it's not ideal. So try to avoid that. And then I'm going to triangle out these corners. And again, I like a nice long triangle. Short ones are fiddly and too hard to deal with. I mean, I obviously can do it. I have done it. But why waste energy when you don't have to? Nice long ones. Look at that. Now, I will need an iron for this. So what I'm going to do with the iron is I'm going to fold this down and I'm going to press that seam so it's flat. Then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to press this one up. Then I push the pocket through and it will be easier to get it flat. So I'm going to go do that now and I will come right back. All right, so it's all ironed nice and flat. You need a zipper, so that is the size of your zipper thing. So I'm doing 8 inches because it's an 8 by 12 inch Tory pocket. And I only cut them out with the Tory pocket template because it's so much easier. All right, so I'm going to put my zip on just a little bit. You don't want to pull it all the way across. And then I always like mine closing to the left. So I'm going to pick this up and lay it over the top. And then I'm going to start in front of the zipper. And I'm going to stitch, backstitch. Keeping the zipper lined up nice and evenly. Then we're going to pivot, go over the zip. Now, if you're using a metal zip, don't try to do that. You will snap your needle. I only use nylon zip. I also only stock nylon zip because it's what I like to use. As a general rule, I will only stock things I like. There's nothing in my repertoire of things except size 3 zipper tape, which funnily enough I'm phasing out because it wasn't very popular. And I need that space for more coloured teeth zip, so. That's not to say it won't come back in the future when I have more space to hoard everything. But it wasn't a very popular zip, so I don't need to stock it. So for those that do use size 3 zip and are not in my Facebook group, it's all on clearance sale. Alright, so I'm going to lay that down. And I'm going to stitch the sides. And then the other side. We're leaving the bottom open because that's where we're going to turn the last bit of the bag through. Not the whole bag. I've worked out I don't like doing it through zipper pockets anymore. I do it the other way. Okay, so I've got the center bottom. I forgot to clip the center top. So we just need to line that up now and do the center top right there. So now I've got top and bottom. I'm going to do the same with this lining piece. I've already done the bottom because of the line I drew, but we want to do the top. We're also going to want to do our main panels. Now these will always fold one way better than the other once they've got all their interfacing on. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to maneuver it. So we should be down to like 5 pieces for the bag. The 4 main panels, exterior and interior, and then our gusset piece that's all joined together. So I'm going to do the lining first because again, lining is more flexible and easier to maneuver. And I want that. So another thing we're going to think about is because the outside top is directional, you want to think about where you want your zipper pocket. So I want mine on this back wall so that when you open the bag and look in, there's the zipper pocket. That's how I work it out. So I'm going to put this one on first because that's the way I like it. And if you've just used one zip, it means that the zips will also go in the same direction. So something else to think about. So So I'm putting some clips along the top curve, then I'm going to come to the bottom and line the bottom centers up as well. It's very important that these things match, and I'm making sure my clips face the gusset piece because I will be sewing it with gusset on top. Just something else to think about. They're easier to pull off if you have them up the right way. Also, because of the way we sewed the side, I can take this piece and I'm going to fold it towards the bottom, and I'm going to do that on all 4 of the sides. And you want this to face down. It makes the bag sit nicer. Don't officially ask me why, it just does. Alright, and then we're just going to maneuver that corner in. It's a 3D object, so push it as one and then clip it in place. I always finish in the corners because the corners is kind of where gathering happens, but kind of not, if that makes sense. So it'll look like it doesn't fit, and then you make it the 3D object it is, and it works out. But that's also why I do it last. Now, you can see I'm using a lot of clips. That is because I do not wish for it to move while I'm trying to sew it, because then I have to stop and readjust everything. So the more clips I use, the less readjusting I'll have to do. I just have to do it this once. Clip, clip. Again, holding it as a 3D object. Clip. Beautiful. I always like to start on the bottom because it's a straight bit. I like to start on a straight. It's just my thing. We're still on a 2.5 stitch length, and off we go. Now we don't have to worry about those base seam allowance parts because we stitch them down so that they're not gonna go the wrong way. Best way to think of that. Now this side bit does potentially get a little bit tricky, but it's not too bad. And then it really opens up again. So I'm at the halfway point now. Again, I can hear my bobbin getting a bit light, but there's no top stitching, so it won't matter if I've got any joins in this. Ignore why I just backstitched then. I thought I was doing the other piece. So just ignore me and that backstitching. It wasn't meant to happen. So now I'm going to take my zigzag scissors and I'm going to cut off the excess at those bottom corner curves. See how it sits like that? It's because the whole 3D object thing. So by cutting it off, it's going to sit nicer in the bag. And then using, where are my normal scissors? They're not here. So I'm just going to keep using zigzag ones. The normal ones are just quicker, that's all. But we're going to cut off all of this excess because by cutting that off, this is now going to sit nicer inside the bag. You're not going to have a whole bunch of stuff. But you'll notice I'm not cutting off the top bit. There is a reason for that, so leave it there. Alright, other side of our lining. See, it looks really pretty though. And then you also want to like check your corners, make sure they're all good. Look at that. Beautiful. Well, you can't really see. Sorry, but it is lovely. So, our other lining piece, we're going to clip that one together. So again, you can start at top or bottom, it doesn't matter. I'm going to start at the top. Clips facing the gusset. Making sure that this, again, is pointing towards the bottom. Important moment. I can do the other side. one broke. It happens. Most of my clips are over a year old, and with the constant use, they tend to be a bit fragile. It's a gift and a curse buying the cheap ones. So I'm lining up the middle with my fingers, and then I'm going to pull this so it's even, and I'm going to clip at the sides because I want to leave this whole lining open so that I can stitch the bag up through here. Right? Making sure it sits properly, and then we can do the last little bit. Again, smushing that in, and then a lot more clips because it's a 3D object, like that. And then we'll come to the other side. So you can turn it through the zipper pocket, but this way is easier and less strain and less stress. Because I know a lot of people fear birthing a bag. So by doing it this way, you're alleviating like 80% of the stress. And we all know I don't like to stress. Clean up the clips as you go. Makes your life easier. And I just keep pushing all of the exterior parts out of the way. I'm essentially just ignoring them and pushing them anywhere. It won't hurt them, and if it does, your bag won't last long enough to be used. If me doing this, like pops the seam and stuff, you need to use a thicker thread because it won't last as a bag. And backstitch. So now I've got all of that gap to turn the bag through. Okay, so another thing we want to think about, and I'm going to turn it out so I can show you what I mean. So this is now the bag, right? This is my top, and see how it's directional. So this on this one is going to be the front of the bag. See how that works? So this is my front. So I have to decide, do I want it to say the Golden Girls or do I want the Golden Girls? And I think I'm going to go with the words because I think that will be better, like that. You can always turn it out and check it, right? I think I want it that way because that looks pretty. So turn that back in the wrong way. It's always good to check though. I don't always necessarily have a plan going into a bag. But as I come up with one, it's good to check to make sure it's working out. Now, these clips are going to be much closer together than the lining clips. I'm going to use probably double the amount of clips on the exterior pieces than I did for the lining. And the reason for that is this foam is firm. It's what makes the bag look awesome, but it is also what makes it harder to maneuver, which means the bag's going to try and fight me a lot more on the direction I think it should be sitting. So more clips means less movement when sewing. Like already you can see I've used way more clips. They're lucky if they're an inch apart. So I'm also going to come and line up the bottom. Now I won't be leaving any of these pieces open. That was just the lining. And again, maneuver your corner in so it all sits nice, and add a lot of clips. There's no shame in using a lot of clips. I'm already using, I don't know, lots. I also like to do this in my lap. It means my arms aren't out trying to do stuff over here because they get tired after a while. Do, 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 do. It's all fitting in lovely, which I like. And then again, this last corner. So the foam is where your seam allowance should be, pretty much, unless it shrunk when you were stitching it. But so the foam piece makes it stay out of your seam so that it's easier to stitch. So these corners should basically smush in up to the foam if you need some help with the smushing part of your corners. So we're going to back stitch. And I'm using the full weight of my arm there to help kind of guide the bag through. I also just ran out of, oh no I didn't, I thought I ran out of bobbin thread. It sounds like I'm about to. Oh I am. So I'm just going to have to pause and do another bobbin because that was only about that much and that was not going to get me much further anyway. So I'm going to do another bobbin and then we will stitch this up. Bobbin is once again full. So I'm just going to go back a little bit from where I left off, where I thought I ran out of bobbin thread but didn't. Right, now right there, that little seam allowance-y bit at the side got caught under my foot. So see, now that I have to squish all the lining, it's much easier because it's the lining and not the exterior. So you should always sew on your lining first. And backstitch when you get back to the start. Trim off any and all tails that you have created or can see just anywhere, because as you can see I have missed a few when trimming tails. And then you want to check to make sure that it's all looking lovely. Alright, so you can just see. You're mainly checking those bottom curves down here to make sure that you did them correctly. Because if you didn't, now's the time to unpick it and fix them. But mine look good, so I'm happy. Please don't think they always look good. Sometimes I'm trying to rush things and they don't work. So I do always check. I don't just assume I did good. So, final piece. So this one's always the hardest to sew on because we're going to fight all the layers of everything. But don't be disheartened. It's not that much harder. It's just a little bit. Right, because the bag now already stands up, mostly. Okay, so I'm going to line up that top center as well. And then squishing around. So any pattern that you have where they have the foam in the seam allowance, you can easily take it out. You take the pattern piece and you measure out what the seam allowance is for that particular pattern. They're usually 3/8 to 1/2 inch. So you could just automatically take 1/2 inch, it wouldn't hurt. So you take off a 1/2 inch from the exterior pattern and that is your foam piecing. So you can do that for every bag ever, just so you know. I tend to, if I don't want it in the seam allowance, I will make a separate pattern piece like this. But for example, Cottywomple, which is not released yet, I wanted the batting in the seam allowance because the seam, sewing it into the seam is what attaches it because it's not an iron-on thing. So I basted it on with the spray stuff, basting spray, but then I've kept it in the seam allowance because that helps to hold it in and be steady. So it's just something else to think about. If you struggle when it's in your seam, just print off another copy of the pattern and then cut off the seam allowance, and then that will be your foam piece from this point on. And especially if you're making these on a domestic, that will make a big difference on how easy it is to sew. Just so you know. Alright, whole bunch of clips again. Don't be scared to use them. We buy them for a reason, not to just sit in a bowl and look pretty. Even though they do, because they're rainbow. Although I wouldn't say no to a bowl of different shades of green ones. I think that would be fabulous for me. It's an unnecessary expense, but it would be something that I would order for like Christmas or my birthday or something. If I could find them. Just shades of green. And maybe pink. I like pink too. Tidy up your clips. Final curve. And then a little bit of straight. Oh. Now we're not finished sewing before we're turning it. We're just taking a moment in case your hands are sore. So I'm now going to take this piece here and the coordinating lining piece, and I'm going to line up the center points here. And I'm going to clip them together even. I don't usually clip them, I just do it. But since I'm having a teaching moment, we're going to clip them together so that they line up evenly. And then I'm going to stitch from there all the way around to there. What this is going to do is it's going to prevent the sagging of your lining inside the top of your bag. So you might find that you have like a saggy lining a lot. This will eliminate that problem. Now you don't want to do the whole lining because then the bag's really hard to turn through. So we're not doing that. We're just going to do like, I don't know, 6 inches, give or take. I'm eyeballing that because it's a curve, but then we're going to do the same. So they're joined all the way across here. So we're just going to fold that over and bring the center points together. It's important to match up those center points, otherwise you'll sew it in crooked. You don't want that, trust me. So again, we're going to grab some clips. We're going to go around. Might get one more clip just to make a point. There's something about that much. I'm just going to push all of the lining in so it's out of my way while I do this. And I'm sewing about 1/4 inch from the original stitches that we did. You don't see this. Let's see. Right. So again, now I've got those 2 lines, and they don't even have to be neat. I don't even try to be neat, but I do try and do it about 1/4 inch. You don't want to do it too close to this edge. So now, I've only got little scissors here. I don't know where all my stuff is. My current setup I'm still not used to. So I'm just going to now cut the corner curves of the exterior part of the bag. Because as you can see, they're folding because they're so thick. Right? So we're just going to cut it off. Normally I do this with bigger scissors, but it would require me pausing the video to go find them, and I'm not doing that. And I'm just hacking. I don't know if you can see that. I'm not being at all neat. We're just hacking it off. Like that. The reason for that, again, is when we turn it, the lining's going to sit nicer. So we're going to put our hand into the bottom of the bag, and I'm going to pick a corner, any corner, and then I'm going to push it in. So I usually make like a bit of a fist to actually push it because it's quite firm. Because of all of the bag foam and the interfacing and everything else we've put in. And then I'm basically taking the lining. If you can get your bag to the point where the lining completely encases the bag, that is the hardest bit. From here, it's easy peasy. You just grab and gently, you don't want to rip as hard as possible, you want to gently pull the lining and the exterior in opposite directions, and it just kind of pops out. You can also put your hand in and punch it out. So I'm making a fist kind of using my knuckles, and I'm just pushing all along the seams of the bag to get them to sit out nicely. See? One more side. Also helps if you actually flip that too. Okay. Looking better. It's still a bit wonky, but that's because we haven't Tory squished it. We don't do that yet. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my hand into the interior zipper pocket and grab the lining where there's a gap and pull it through, which is there to there. Now, the bigger the gap, the easier the bag is to turn, but the potentially more tricky it is to stitch it shut. So just keep that in mind. That's why I don't do any of the curves, because trying to stitch the curves while pulling it through is tricky, and I don't want tricky, I want easy. So I've gone over about 1 inch of the old stitching to make sure that there's no gaps. I don't want to leave a gap accidentally. And then I'm just lining them up a little bit at a time to stitch the hole closed. You'll never be able to do it in one long line because it's attached to the bag. So don't try. You can go ahead and pre-clip it, but it will never sit in a beautiful straight line, even though it is a straight seam. So then I'm going to come and I'm going to hack off all of the seam allowance. Again, this goes much quicker if you have bigger scissors. Mine are currently at the cutting table from where I was cutting out the matching wallet this morning. So I'm making a matching strumpet wallet because I had enough fabric and it's going to look fabulous. And I fussy cut that too because, you know, you just do. So now I'm going to push the lining into the bag. And then I always stand up for this. It's just a habit. I get a better push. I'm pushing the lining in so that it's all sitting. This really needs a Tory squish. It's annoying me. Right. So I'm going to push all the lining in and make sure that the bag is sitting nicely. Now if I just push this one down, see how this is not sagging at all? That is because we tacked it to the top. I'm still going to iron it to the bag foam, but it has helped in the sense that without it, it's still not sagging. See that? Sits all the way up. So that's what that little bit was for. Now, the other reason I haven't closed the bag yet is because I want to make sure that I don't want to put a magnet on here. If I want to put a magnet, I want to do it through the zipper pocket. But I'm good. So I think that's going to just sit lovely. Ooh, there's a thread. So I'm really, really happy with that. So we're going to pull out a lining. We're going to tuck in those raw edges. If you have fabric tags, you can also put a fabric tag in this seam. People are less likely to rip it out of here. If you put it somewhere annoying, they will cut it out of the bag. And then when they want another one, they're going to forget who made it. So when attaching tags, always put them in places that won't annoy people. Because I'm one of those people. If the tag's in the way, I just cut it off. I regret my decision later, usually, but whatever. So that's that pocket shut. Zip it shut. Again, so the lining is doing a little bit of sagging, but that's just because it needs to be ironed to the exterior. It's really not that bad, actually. Not that bad at all. Handles! Let's do it! When I was doing a bobbin, I also went and got more of them so that we've got enough. So, now, the way I want the handles to work is they are going to, you know what, they both look good. I want them to come in through the hole and then up like that. So, I'm going to do this one first. I'm going to do it in steps. Step 1 is thread it through, and then step 2 is put your zipper end on. I'm going to keep that bag for later. we need our electric zipper. Not electric zipper, electric screw. So you want to think about how they're going. So they're going this way. So I want the smooth side with no zips to be facing like this so that you won't see the screws. Did I just say zips? I think I did. I meant screws. You also want to make sure it's centered and pushed all the way to the end. And then on we go. Next one. So I'm actually going to put all these on before I start riveting things. Right, so that will go up like that. So I'm going to take some wonder clips and just clip it in place because that makes sense. Then I'm going to lean it out, make sure there's no twists, bring it down and then through, and then you want to double check it to make sure there's no twists. So even though we did a really long handle, see how it's not crazy long? It's because we've done them here, which is fine, but just something to think about. Right, so again, we want to go up like this, and then we want to thread it on so it's facing out like that and looking fabulous. And then we need a screw, so I'm going to try and balance the screw. I saw that one running away. Balance the screw, then grab this. Right. Then we're going to get the next one, do the same thing. Now again, you don't have to do these. You could face the raw edges to the inside and you wouldn't need these and you wouldn't really even see them. I just think it's pretty. And I do videos to teach you cool new stuff, so. And I think that a bag that's got all this extra bling is more likely to sell if you have a shop or you do markets. Something else to think about. So again, I'm going to go from behind, through, grab an end, fold it up. Ooh, I've got a squiggly piece of runaway tail. There we go. Thread this on the end. So this also hides all that back stitching that we did to make it look pretty. So that's good. Drop the screw in. I'm pretty sure there's a way to make these more magnetized. You can buy a thing. So when I'm in town later, I might go to Bunnings and see if I can get one that does the magnetizing and re-magnetize the end, because that would be awesome. Right, so on. Now this is not the final position of where I'm putting it. Please know I am just clipping this here as a temporary hold to make sure that nothing twists while I'm making handles. Very important to remember. This is not measured. I'm going to measure them all so that they're all the same and look pretty. I just want to make sure that I'm putting everything on without it twisting. So I have one extra, so this will be for another crossbody strap another time. I do love my strap ends. I got them in because I wanted to use them. Right, other way. So again, we want to make sure that the screws will not be showing because it's prettier if they don't. Right, there we go. One. Lucky last, and then we can move on to rivets. I probably could have stopped the video so you didn't have to watch me do this a million times, but that's okay. We're done now. Ta-da! We're nearly done. The bag's looking cool. So now we need a ruler, and I'll just get a short one. And so what we're going to do is we want to just be able to rivet them above the thing. So I'm going to measure from the end of the strap to where it folds is going to be 1.5 inches. And then I'm going to put proper clips. Right. Whoops. So that is officially the length that I want to use. So now I'm going to come and I'm going to do it to all of them before I pull up my hole punch. Oh, I did that one already, apparently. I mean, I didn't, but I bought it pretty well. This one's not right. One and a half. So again, I'm just kind of guessing that number. This is not the be all and end all. I just want to make sure, because this pocket is on a curve, I need to make sure that I can actually get the rivet on. Something to think about. A little bit too short, but not too much. Right there. Okay, so now they're all where I want them. And you'll notice I've put 2 clips on each of them so that they hold in place. That way they can't twist out of place, because that's not what I want at all. Whoa. Oh, right, here we go. I always like to empty this every now and again. It gets full of a lot of stuff. Okay, I'm just going to put the one rivet. So I'm going to have to remove one of my clips. And you'll notice I'm now standing up over the bag. You're not really going to be able to see this. But I am just going to hole punch right there. Like that. And then I'm going to grab a rivet, put it in the hole. And I'm going to put the cap on the back. You know what? And I'm going to do the whole thing at once. That way I won't drop and lose anything. Because for this video so far, I've been doing pretty well in not losing all the stuff. So I'm going to tilt it completely upside down, put it underneath, and squish. 1 is done. 3 to go. And I'm going to put some rivets in these side ones too, just so you all know. Because they are longer, I've decided I want them. Nice and straight and even. See, again, this will be much easier to do when they hang over the edge of a table. I won't have to maneuver as much. But that's one handle done. Isn't it adorable? I guess if you wanted to, you could also stitch that over and have like a rolled handle in the middle, but I don't want that. That's probably one step too far for me today. Right, take off one clip. I'm not taking off both because the other one's still helping hold the stability. I'm just squishing the bag underneath, lining it up. Squish a hole, grab a rivet, push it through, cap on the back. Now, if you've only got one of these, obviously you can just do all the holes and then all the rivets. I just like to do it this way. Mainly because I'm paranoid I'm going to drop something. It is, you know, in my repertoire of things to do. So you can't really blame me. Alright, last one. Rivet, cap, clip off, and squish. And then again, to stop this flopping around as much, I'm going to do these as well. So you don't have to do this. I could have also just sewn them shorter, but we didn't. So this is my solution. Just to kind of help keep them together a bit better. post, cap, squish. Post, cap, get the zipper out of the way, you don't want to squish your zipper in there, you'll distort your rivet. There we go. Oops. And then this goes on here. Maybe. 1, 2, because they're all because they're twisty ones, it actually doesn't matter which way you put that on. And then I will just need to go around and Tory squish all of this, and I need to go and iron from the inside of the bag. But I think that come out magical. And the handles are really cool. So they're not distorting the bag, but they're also not they're attached to the pocket instead. It's just, you know, something different. Anyway guys, I'm gonna go. Thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you for the next video. Bye bye.